Hi everyone. I'd like to discuss the timeliner in Navisworks in this blog. So I've just opened up a blank file in Navisworks and I'm going to append a Revit file for those that are familiar with Revit. It's bringing in the Revit model and listing by level the different categories. And when we click on the timeliner, here we can see it's meant for the sequence of operations during construction. Now you can add tasks manually, indent them and so on. You can also choose which columns to display. Important here is to note that we've got things like the display ID, importantly the Synchronization ID, which is not shown, but that is necessary for us later. And then also we've got some user defined properties. So in total, all of these properties are the ones that can be assigned to tasks. Now it's quite a laborious process if you think that you might want to schedule that based on, say, the 2015 unit loss definitions. And what I've done in this file is to say that all of the operations can be applicable, say, over basement 3, basement 2. Typically these tasks, buildings, how they are constructed or not constructed, all of the columns at once, but per level. So one could think about it as per the structure of the Revit model within the Navisworks selection tree. So here we would have things like our walls on level 3, but you would also have walls on level 2, and they would be constructed at different times. So using the unit class as a starting point, the unit class is set up so that it goes in sequence how a typical building is described. We would then like to bring in these tasks into Navisworks. So I've duplicated the unit class standard using a decimal point between each subdivision, and then I've included a designator for basement 3 and basement 2, and one could conceptually then go on to basement 1, ground floor, first floor, etc. After this has been done, I'm using a CSV file with the following format. So CSV means comma delimited file. It's a special format, basically a text file with commas between the entries. And here we can see the Synchronization ID. I used the Unicode itself with basement 3 and then carried it through into basement 2, and one could have more. Now of course this denotes everything that is possible within the standard, and you would be welcome to delete the code entries that are not applicable to the level that you are looking at, only what is necessary for your building. The headers are important. The first row is the headers, or are the headers. You can see it's got a planned date and a start date and an actual date and an end date. Now I've just used these to correspond to the Navisworks naming. It could be different naming. You have the option to map them later. And you could set up this within Excel, Microsoft Project, CCS, There's a lot of programs with which you can generate some or other sequence for the building. So after this has been saved as a CSV file, commented delimited file, we would then like to bring that into Navisworks to populate our timeliner. When we go to the Data Sources tab of the timeliner and we say Add, you can see the CSV Import is the first option. Here are Microsoft projects and Primavera, but anything that isn't listed as a direct data source to these platforms, you can bring it in as a CSV import, and that is what we're going to do. So we add CSV import, we browse to our CSV timeliner file that we've created, and this is where we need to map onto the external file name. So if you had used different names, then you would be able to map the Navisworks columns onto the external file name. As it is, because I constructed the file to have the same column names, it automatically tries to map it. The synchronization ID is the one that doesn't appear within the timeliner itself, but remember, I used the code, and then one says OK. So this has brought in the new data source. If we look at the tasks, there are no tasks. So what's required for us is to right click on the data source and say rebuild task hierarchy. Now the warning basically says that some of the fields are not filled out and we should fill them out. But here we can see how the coding and the sequencing came in to our file. Now I would like to indent further, and unfortunately what you'll see is that you only have 2 levels of indentation. I'm using Shift to select multiple entries, and then I'm going to do an indent. What this allows me to do is to say collapse basement 3. And similarly to basement 2. There I'm indenting basement 2. And I'd be able to collapse basement 3 and basement 2. Beyond that, we are unable to indent further. But that in essence is how we get our timeliner structure, the sequence of our building operations, our construction operations, into the timeliner of Navisworks. I hope you guys have enjoyed this short demonstration, and that you will also use the CSV import when it is applicable to your project. Thank you, and have a great week further.